Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the next career coaching webinar of the Advanced series with the title Speak About Your Skills. My name is Merel, and this is my colleague Nicole Wedell van Leupoldt. We both work for the Eureka Career Center of KU Leuven, and we will be presenting this webinar for you today. This is a new webinar, a new career coaching webinar in the Advance series. Advance is an innovative and focused learning program for future developers of ATMPs for early career biomedical scientists. And there is a series of webinars, there is an online course and a 5 days intensive workshop. We are at the end of the project and we still have 4 webinars to go, 2 technical ones and 2 career coaching ones. So the 3 remaining webinars, I will talk about that at the end of this webinar. The project partners of Advance, you can see here. So we are from KU Leuven, Belgium. There have already been some other career coaching webinars. For those of you who find this interesting, please have a look on our YouTube site. We will put a link. Nicole will put the link in the chat box. So there was a webinar, how to prepare for a job interview, how to optimize your CV and motivation letter, a webinar on stress and well-being, and also on the hiring process, which was actually a panel discussion. So if you're interested on that, please have a look there. But for now, we would, before we get going, we are also interested, where are you joining this webinar from? So if you can use your tablet, computer or phone, Pol F/Eureka, where are you calling from? Please let us know so we have a little bit of a view. Okay, Finland. Okay, Belgium. So it's polf.com. Okay. Okay. Okay, nice. Welcome, everybody. Trying to send you also the link. Do it later. So Belgium, many people from Belgium, but I also see Canada, Finland, Italy, France, Switzerland, Germany, Kortrijk and Leuven, of course. We're also here from Leuven, Brussels. So a warm welcome to all of you. Really nice to see all these. Okay, what is on the agenda for today? So this webinar is actually really about your skills, about becoming aware of your skills, but also about the need to be able to talk about your skills in a CV, also in a job interview. They're actually your key to employability. So we have an hour today. At the end, we have about 5 to 10 minutes for all your questions. If you have questions during the webinar, you can already type them in the Q&A box. There is a question box. You can also upvote questions of others, so we can have a look at them at the end of this webinar. Okay, this is quite a chaotic image, and this is an image of Pryor and Bright referring to how careers of people look like. So they're highly non-logical and highly non-linear. There are not many people who are doing what they thought they would be doing when they were 5 years old. Maybe it's the case for you, I don't know, but for most of us, it's not the case. Things happen in our career, we do a study, things happen by accident, we meet, we engage, and we find our way. So it's maybe also reassuring. So they're highly non-logical and non-linear. There is also the theory of Marinka Kuipers and Humboldt, and it's about planned happenstances. They say a career gradually evolves, there are stepping stones, and things happen, and they can become a possibility in your career. Sometimes things also happen and they're not the right step, but it's also interesting. It's also interesting to become aware of what you do find interesting and what is your way. So it's really important in this complex labor market of today to be open to what can happen to you. So it's actually when we talk about careers today, we can talk about planning, but there is also a lot that cannot be planned. But it's important to stay open to the things that will happen in your career. So in this complex labor market of today, how can you find your way? In this planned happenstance theory, we also talk about career competencies or career skills. So these are the skills you can use to navigate in the complex labor market of today. And the skills that you can use to be behind the steering wheel of your own career. The first one is called self-awareness. It's about 3 important questions. Who am I? What do I want? And what am I good at? What are my skills? It's about becoming aware of yourself, of your labor market identity, and also creating a language that matches this labor market identity at this moment. So there are many exercises that can help us with becoming more self-aware about who we are in our careers. So we become aware about our interests, our talents, our skills, our values, our drivers, our core qualities, also our pitfalls, etc. So this is self-awareness, a first and important one. We cannot skip this one. The second one is called exploratory networking. When you're in your career and you want to move around or you want to make a next move, how do you know that a certain job will really be fitting you? It's important not to only make this a reflective exercise, but also engage in exploratory networking. So to go outside, to talk to people, to get a sharp view of what certain jobs can look like. The image I use here is you want to find information so you can get a sharp photo. You're not yet making choices, but you're really exploring maybe an internal labor market, maybe the bigger industry outside academia, an external labor market, whatever. You're just exploring. You're going out and asking questions to people. You're asking for advice. You're asking for information. You're not yet asking for a job. You're really trying to network to get some information. And then there is self-branding. Because of course you can be very, very aware of yourself, your labor market identity, but you also have to show yourself. We have a saying here in Belgium, good wine sells itself, but this is not the case for your careers, unfortunately. So you will have to be able to talk about yourself. And this webinar of today is also about talking, giving words to your skills. And then it's also up to you to show who you are to potential employers. And then the fourth career skill is called planning. I've already referred to it in the former slide. So it's like an open planning. It's planning the unplannable a little bit. So it could be every year around New Year, making a walk in the forest, setting yourself some goals, seeing where you are, but also going out, engaging in possibilities, in meeting people, so things can happen. So these are these planned happenstances. And you also see this person standing there in the middle, because that's us. So we are there with all our emotions, our fears, like, okay, we can be working all those 4 career skills, but what now? Do I dare to move? Do I dare? What will I do with this self-knowledge I have? So this is also important, to acknowledge this emotional side. And actually the antidote for this fear is actually these 4 career skills. So this is a little bit of an introduction in the webinar of today. and to situate a little bit what we will be talking about. We'll be talking about skills. You've probably heard about, there are many ways we can talk about skills: soft skills, hard skills, the technical skills, the knowledge skills, transferable skills. These are the skills you've acquired in one context and you can deploy in another context. There is really also, of course, the issue, what you learn in academia, how can you transfer them outside of academia? Are these the same skills? What do you need to learn, etc.? There's been done some interesting research on that. So a first part of this webinar is about this self-awareness, and I have an exercise here in the webinar for you. So this is an individual exercise. So please take a piece of paper, and I will ask you to think of 2 flow moments. Success stories, but please don't be frightened by the title success. It's something you're proud of. Try to think of a moment in your professional life where you're proud of. If it's difficult in your professional life or during your PhD or whatever, you can, of course, also look in a non-professional context, or you can take one in the private context and one in the professional, whatever. Just try to think of 2 moments that brought you in flow. So flow really meaning the time was really passing by. I really enjoyed it. I really got a lot of energy out of doing that. So you felt at your best. And then I will ask you to write these stories down, give them a title. And here is a tip for you. You can try to build your narrative using the STAR methodology. The STAR methodology is actually also a framework interviewers in job interviews use to check to which extent you have a certain level of skill. So what is this about? This is an acronym. The S stands for, okay, what was the context? What was the situation? How did you get into this experience? Who was involved? T, what was your task, your role at that moment? A stands for action. What actions did you do? Didn't you do? It's really about you. So try not to use the we form, but you. How did you overcome any difficulties, etc.? And also what really made the difference? Maybe it was really a certain honest communication, for example, whatever. Then what was the result for you? What were you really proud of in this example? And then there is also an additional R. It's not necessary, but we use it a lot, and it stands for reflection. If you look back, maybe you would do something different now. It's also important, you know, for people who do job interviews, that you're able to reflect upon your own self and that you're able to give feedback to yourself. So please take a couple of minutes for this individual exercise and to write down these 2 success stories. And once you've done this, try to think or try to see if you can find some skills in these stories, in these success stories. So we'll give you a couple of minutes, 5 minutes for this exercise. We'll also use the result of what you're doing now later on in the part that Nicole will talk about. How can you use those skills in your CV? So please take some time. And whenever you're ready, there is also a Paul F. So the same address, paulf.com/Eureka. What did you find as skills, transferable skills in your own success stories? We have the first one, communication. Great. The link to the poll, the link to the poll is paulf.com/Eureka. I'll write it down here. Okay, any answers coming in? Management, communication, scientific determination. Wow, nice. Resilience, teamwork, persistence, creative thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, assertiveness, patience, dedication. Wow. Experiences, emotional experiences, commitments. I see the word effective, gain, hard, cultural, learn, ability. Lovely. Intelligence, diligence, new, work, scenarios, challenging. A very diversified language in talking about skills, and the word communication is really the biggest one. So this is really a skill that is popping up in a lot of your success stories. Also management, teamwork, knowledge, scientific knowledge. So a lot of times what we see, if we write down a couple of these success stories, we also see that the skills that we can derive in these success stories are a bit similar for each and every one of us personally. I mean, not in between you, but this is also a way in trying to tangle your own core skills. And with core skills, I mean the skills you're really good at and you also like doing. And so these are actually also the two things that define flow. And that's why we wanted to do this exercise to already make you find or get in touch with, okay, what is this flow about? And this is, of course, really great if in your work you can do something that brings you in flow. And I see these images keep on moving. Okay. Great. Thank you all for sharing. I also see diverse, consistency, people management, people is becoming bigger, teamwork, educational. I see the word perfectionism. Okay, lovely. Let's go to the next slide. This is what we call the competencies and motivation matrix. So the in-flow part is where you're highly proficient and you're very motivated. When we talk about skills, a lot of times we talk about how skilled are we, and we want to be highly proficient. And if we don't have a lot of skill, it gives us some fear. So we try to focus on, but of course it's not so easy when we score ourselves, because there can be a lot of noise on that. Maybe we are a bit modest, maybe the contrary of that, or we don't really know what a certain skill is about. So when we talk about skills, it's actually really important to really take some time, and you can ask yourself the feedback. You can also ask others. We have these methods such as 360 degrees feedback, so you can ask feedback. But what we wanted to also highlight here is the importance also of the motivation. How much do you like doing certain things, certain skills, certain tasks? Because of course, this is important. If you're not motivated and at the same time you're very good at something, you really have to be careful for bore out, maybe even burnout. Of course, there are other reasons for burnout, but this can really be one. So it's really very simple to try to also look at how much do you like to do certain skills. And to complete the matrix, that you can also be little skilled and very motivated. So it will give you some fear, but you still like doing it. These are learning opportunities, things to follow a coaching or a formation in maybe, or maybe in your free time. And then there is one part which is more to delete. If you would really work with skills where you have little or no skill in and you're really not motivated, it really gives you and fear and very low motivation. So this really won't get you out of bed in the morning. Just some inspiration, because of course you need a language when you go out and talk about yourself in the labor market, in your CV, in a job interview, in networking, in formative networking. You need some language to be able to talk about your skills. On this website of Vitae, which is created by academic, both with private and public sector, specifically for researchers in making the transition from academia to non-academia. There is a very interesting skills model, which you can see here, and they have very interesting lenses, such as, for example, the employability lens, the leadership lens. You also have a lot of definitions. What are the behavioral indicators associated with a certain skill? So you can really score yourself also in these 4 domains. Knowledge, intellectual abilities, personal effectiveness, research, governance and organization, and engagement, influence and impact. But there are a lot of skill models, but we thought this is really an interesting one for you. This is a slide coming from Doc and Hans. So research has been done with people graduating in medical and health sciences and self-reporting on their level of skill, which is the dark blue line at the end of their PhD. And then in their current job, whatever job it is. And then you can see that actually it's quite a positive message. So it's not really very different, but in certain cases, some skills need to be developed more. Even the critical analytical thinking, problem solving, flexibility, personal effectiveness, for example, also networking, negotiation, self-branding, effective communication. So, and research also shows this skills such as leadership, project management, networking. There is some translation needed to be done going from academia to non-academia. Okay. Skills in your CV. This is something that Nicole will talk to you about.
All right. A lot about skills. What kind of skills? Now let's make the translation indeed, how to speak about your skills in a CV. And there's very many different ways. And we're not going to do like a full CV writing webinar kind of thing. There's recordings of such, and you have received a handout, I suppose. But here we really want to focus on how now to speak about your skills in a CV. You see this example CV. It's not a template. It's to some, it might look plain, but it has a lot of white spaces. It's easy to grasp. It has everything it needs. So it's some very good examples here. Excuse my voice here. So different ways of speaking about the skills. Well, he's mentioning his personal profile, employment history, education, competences, selected publications, languages, and interests. In his employment history, using always the same structure, really, his function, of course, the date, the institution, and then one sentence: strong innovator with expertise in bioinformatics, nanotechnology, as evidenced in 3 patents. Coming back to this in just a few minutes. Then do not forget, we sometimes see that people speak about their project, but not so much about themselves. Obviously, speak about your skills, your added value to the project, to whatever it is, using certain wordings and using numbers. And I'm coming back to that in a minute as well. I'm jumping to the second page here. I want to focus on the competencies, because this person in his CV is actually dedicating a whole section on competencies. And you see 5, 6 competencies he's highlighting here. So it's probably not all the long list of competencies he has to offer, but he's really picking the ones that are most relevant for the job. Speaking about tailoring your CV to the job, to the team, to the company, and giving it some body, giving it some tangibility. So he's literally adding a short sentence to each of those skills. So he's also speaking about communication, was big in the survey we've just done, planning and organizational leadership. And then, for example, he's writing, developed strong planning and organizational skills, following dedicated training and hands-on experience from several roles with a high degree of independence. So you might wonder, is it worth having a whole section? Yes, it is, because it's very focused on what he needs for this job, and he's giving it much more body and prove actually his skills. Now, what you are seeing here I'm jumping to the left-hand side, in his employment history, using certain verbs to start each sentence, in this case, lead, supervise, coordinate, and so on, by using action words. And then depending on what language you're writing your CV in, obviously, but if you write that in English, here are example words you can use to indicate certain skills. So for example, if you want to highlight that you are a good team player, not just say I'm a good team player, but in your description of things, use words like acknowledged, assimilated, blended, coalesced, collaborated, contributed, harmonized, because we're speaking about team player skills here. To the right, leadership, if you want to highlight that you have leadership skills, here, authorized, chaired, cultivated, delegated, directed, enabled, mentored, and so on. Same if you want to highlight that you can be responsible for things, goes hand in hand with managerial skills. And management was, I think, the second biggest word in the word cloud we just did. So responsible for, by saying you acquired, achieved, acted as, completed, forged, made, navigated, negotiated, and so on. And same for communication, advocated, authored, clarified, composed. So it's the wording really. First, we saw the full sentence or a shorter sentence per each skill. Be also very much aware of the words you use, which indicate already certain capabilities. Now, a third method, speaking about your skills in the CV, here an example. Same structure, but different. In this example, it starts with the institution and at the function. My PhD thesis at Institute so-and-so focused on X and Y. I led a team of 3 PhD students and 2 research assistants to realize the project, supervised 5 master students, and recruited 1,200 participants and convinced 19 board members. You see very many numbers in this little text here. Whenever you can put a number on your task, it makes it so much more tangible. A recruiter or hiring manager can understand so much better what it is that you are speaking about. Are you leading a team of 1 other person, like of 2, or are you leading a team of 5 or of 10? So whenever you can add numbers here, it makes it, tangible. I'm repeating myself. Also, what I read in this example, someone who's saying recruited 1,000 whatever participants, convinced so and so many board members, even though this person is not saying that she is good in negotiation or in communication, this is definitely something you can read out of those numbers. Someone who is able to convince so many. If in my job I want to fill, I need someone who can have some client contact, some outreach contact, some sales potentially. This is definitely an interesting candidate because of those numbers. Now, I don't mean you have to put numbers on everything. This can be quite the opposite. But whenever you can put numbers, it makes just sense for the reader. If you wonder what kind of numbers to put, here are a few ideas. on presentations, for example, on publications, on grants, grant funding, if you're allowed to disclose those numbers, of course, discoveries, collaborations, innovations, or patents. So when you're speaking about those kind of things, don't forget the quantifiable aspect here. Yet, another way, this actually is inspired by the cheeky scientists. Some of you might know. They are using, it's called the three-part sentence. Now, he's or she's saying, strong innovator with expertise in bioinformatics and nanotechnology as evidence in 3 patents. You see here we have the color code, the transferable skill, the strong innovator, the technical skill, being expert in bioinformatics, nanotechnology, and yet again, the quantifiable result, the number on it to make it all much more readable. This is tricky to do, but it's very strong. So you can use that for in your CV, for example, under the employment history. You could also use that under the personal information on top, where you write like 2 sentences maybe. So it's a very strong way of combining transferable technical skills. Yet few other ways. If you decide to use a template CV, you often have the 2 columns, and what we then often see is that people having a list of skills and adding some graphical ratings to it. So it's the bullets or the stars or whatever you choose, really. Now, my recommendation is be careful with those things. It is visually pleasing, easy to grasp. However, in this example here on the left-hand side, this person is speaking about a couple of skills, even adding 3 dots, which means like nothing. And with all those 4 skills, she is having the full amount of dots, so 5 out of 5. Now, this is tricky to read. I don't know what you're feeling towards it is, but to me, it also indicates, okay, I'm perfect in those things. There's no much room for improvement, but on the same side, adding the 3 dots. So in what are you perfect? So I think this is actually a not so clever example. It doesn't really add any value to have those little dots here towards it. Now, I'm jumping to the right-hand side in this blue column. You see someone who's just adding the skills without the rating. Makes much more sense and is visually nice to have an overview. However, in combination with the competencies section on your CV, where it's much more tangible, you may just pick like the top 5 or so skills and speak about them. I think the combination actually makes it work. And an example here of the languages. On the other hand side, if you speak about your language skills, it does make more sense to have some sort of rating, because everyone can relate to what a 5-star or bullet language capability would mean. That's your mother tongue. And then you can rate it much easier. So languages, I don't find it so disturbing as the example here on the left. And one more thing, this is just a screenshot of the example CV. This person was also speaking about his interest. Now, you can speak about your interests and your hobbies on your CV. Some may wonder, ooh, why? Yeah, why really? Well, first of all, because it adds a human touch, and everyone likes to see a human behind the CV. So it does add a human touch. But the point is, it's not about just adding some interest or adding some hobbies. It's not about filling some white space somewhere, but does it make sense for the CV, for this function? And if you have hobbies with which you can actually prove other skills, then please add them. Now, in his example, he is next to sports saying riding a motorcycle. And I know this person back then, he was applying for a big consultancy where they are probably looking for someone who is willing to take risks. And by putting he's riding a motorcycle as a hobby, he is indicating that he is a risk taker. So it does make sense. if you are applying to a brewery, now here in Leuven, we have a big brewery, and you're brewing beer at home, it does need to go here. Team sports can be very valuable. With team sports, you can indicate that you're a team leader, team player, whatever skills it is, or even the scouts. Now here in Belgium, we have many people who have been in the scouts leading groups of kids. It can make sense if you don't have proof elsewhere in the CV to use it in the interests. All right, very many different ways. Now, you may wonder, do I really need so many transferable skills, soft skills here in that case on my CV? It really depends on what kind of job you are going for. If you're really going for a research kind of function, yes, your research capabilities, programming skills, the technical skills should be the majority. That's the point. But if you're going for more managerial kind of job, do make sure that you speak a lot about all those skills that you have been picked up during your PhD or postdoc. And should you still wonder what kind of skills you can speak about, this is here the last one I brought for today. Those are on the left-hand side, typical things someone doing a PhD is doing: writing long theses, having supervisors, analyzing, conducting interviews, completing a PhD. And there's certain competency skills that go hand in hand. If you are still on the search for, okay, what do I need to speak out? What do I want to speak out? So for example, writing a long thesis, ability to present in a clear manner, or having several supervisors or a big group of collaborators or so, negotiation skills can be proved by that. Or here, this one, I conducted interviews where questionnaire design. But what I find interesting here is also diplomacy and confidentiality, which are relevant in very many jobs. So it might not be too crazy. It's what you do in your daily life, in your lab, and wherever you're working, and what are you taking from there, and how can you actually translate that to the next job. And there is a second small exercise here. So if you want to receive the digital badge, I believe it's called, from Advanced, there is this exercise you can do. So first, take the skills you have from, for example, the exercise earlier, the success story exercise, or others that you haven't mentioned there just yet. And then look at your CV and actually include them into your CV in those different ways. And here I'm just repeating what I've been speaking about over the last 10 minutes or so, using certain action words, quantifiable numbers, or the three-part sentence with the transferable technical skill plus the quantifiable outcome, or the one sentence per competence, or even the hobbies and the interest, or the ratings, if they make sense to use those ratings. If you do that with your CV, and if you send in your CV to Merel Ackx at Leuven.be by next week, Friday, I believe it is, then you will receive the digital badge. And you know what? I'm giving you, how much? Let's say 5 minutes for you to start with that. 5 minutes to think about in what way could you speak about your skills in the CV you are writing. Maybe you have the CV already. I will just give you a couple of minutes. I'm setting the timer and I'll be back in max 5 minutes. All right. There's the timer. We will have a room for Q&A in just a little bit. But before that, speaking about your skills in your CV. And next step, obviously, is speaking about your skills in the job interview. And I give back the microphone to Merel.
Hello, everybody. So speaking about your skills in a job interview, so the main message I have for you here is, well, first of all, you can, we have done a whole webinar on how to do a job interview. So you can watch that on the YouTube channel of Advance. We'll be sure to send the link also after this webinar to you, together also with the handout of how to adjust your CV. A motivation letter, so you have a lot of info, and you can have a look at all these other webinars we did in the past 2 years. So the main message I have for you here is prepare, 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 because yeah, you can become aware of what your own skills are. You can see a job listing and see, okay, this is a job that will match my skills. Then you can follow all the suggestions that Nicole just gave, and how to highlight everything in your CV, creatively adapt your CV in order to get invited for the job interview, which we sincerely hope you will get invited for, of course. But then it's really up to you to convince the potential employers that you really have the skills, and they won't just take that for granted. They won't just believe you. So what you have to do, I really honestly believe, is you have to prepare. And it takes a lot of work, because you really have to find out first, okay, what does this certain skill mean? And then look in your own success stories, but of course also other professional and personal experience. Do I find proof that I really have this skill? And to which extent do I have this skill? How do I have proof that I have the level of the skill that is acquired for this job? And can I also give a good self-estimation of my own level? And of course, is there also, do I have the motivation and the capabilities to grow in this skill? So this is actually my main message for you here: prepare, prepare, prepare. And I've also included, again, the STAR acronym here as a backbone. So this is the way you can prepare for the job interview, using this structure in your mind. So if you have to, for example, prove that you're good at project management, that you're good at leadership, people management skills, good at making decisions, having a clear vision, things like that, first have a look, okay, what does this skill really mean? And then try to find some examples, professional examples, that you have really proof of this skill. So this is actually the message I have for you. This is how you, what the content you need to be able to convince the potential employers. And then, of course, there is also how you say what you have to say. And this is important. For this, I really refer you to the other webinar we did last year with a colleague, Kim. And I will just give you one tip. I will also send it in the chat. Just watch the TED Talk of Amy Cuddy, Fake It Till You Become It. She's talking about the power pose, which is a very good preparation in doing a job interview, which really gives you some assertiveness and power in the energy you will send out. And this, together with your good preparation, will sure to help you, I think, very much in convincing the potential employers that you really can be the good candidate they're looking for. Okay, in this webinar, we really tried not to repeat what we have already talked about in other webinars, but as I said, we will send out the handout, so you will have that. And we have also included the assignments that Nicole talked about. So, and then you can obtain the digital badge. This is something also in this advanced project, so you can also put it in your LinkedIn or what you want. Okay, we still have a couple of minutes now for questions. So feel free to ask, to send your questions in the questions and answer box. We'll send the YouTube link in the mail following on this, together with the handout. And at the end of this webinar, there will also be a short survey, so you can give your feedback. I see not really questions are coming, so feel free if you have any to share some questions? There is some time provided for this.
Are you still already working on your CV? Are you applying already at the moment? Have you put together a business kind of CV?
Okay, questions are coming in.
A developing skill, a skill you are not yet expert in, I suppose you mean. Should the CV in LinkedIn be so specific? Should the CV in LinkedIn be so specific as a regular one? Which is your recommendation when you don't have working experience? All right. Skills you are. Should the CV be adapted to each job offer? Well, that's a quick answer. Should a CV be adapted to each job offer? Clearly, yes. If you are applying to in an unsolicited way, if you're just applying and there's no job offer, it still needs to be adjusted or tailored to the company using the words they use on their website, for example. But if you are going for a specific job, you're applying for a specific job, really take a highlighter, a pen. There's also online programs, Skill Thinker, for example, to do that, and use the words that are using in the vacancy. This has several reasons. One is if you're going for bigger companies, they have a recruiting team, a hiring team, and they don't necessarily know everything you need to do there, but they will get a list of words with the command, find me someone who fits here. So they will definitely be looking for those words. Make it as serviceable, as easy to read for a recruiter by using the same words. Also, if you think of application tracking systems, there will be an algorithm searching for those words. So yes, it should definitely be tailored to every job. Okay, maybe we go back to the first one. How can I effectively place a developing skill? Do you have a spontaneous idea here?
Well, I think if they're needed, if they're one of the core skills needed in the job, it's important to definitely show your motivation and that you have a developing capacity for that. Otherwise, I would certainly highlight the skills they actually really need and that really match your core skills, and then also mention them.
And you can, as a PhD, always really argue that you're a quick learner and a fast learner and someone who can pick up things on the job. Often we have the question when it comes to languages, is another language necessary? If you can indicate that you have been, I don't know, follow an online course, like to start very simple on a certain skill. You can even follow LinkedIn courses on certain skills. And you indicate that and you pick it up in your motivation letter. You can even speak about it in your little profile summary on top of the CV, that this is something you're going for. Give it a little ignition and definitely show motivation.
Yes, maybe it's also a little bit a link to the questions of Liliana, who asked, which is your recommendation when you don't have work experience? It's really good to highlight, well, your motivation and your learning skills. And of course, what we've talked about here, the self-awareness, this is something you can do, and you can always reflect on yourself. What are the things you're really good at? And if you really just graduated as a master, but a lot of times you have as a volunteer experience, you have experience in doing certain projects. So you always have a lot of information that you can use and that you can use to translate and to creatively adapt in your CV. So you probably have much more than you think at first glance, and really highlight that, and also your learning capability.
And also, I don't know where you're calling from, but definitely doing a PhD here in Belgium, we do count towards work experience, because you do so much more. You are probably I don't know, running a lab or helping to run a lab, collaborating. You are probably supervising some master students. So definitely try to use your PhD time as work experience and speak about it as work experience, indeed.
Mm-hmm. So Nicole, do you think the CV in LinkedIn should be so specific as a regular one?
The difference here between the CV and LinkedIn is a CV, and I've said that earlier, should always be tailored to the job or to the team or to the company, whereas on LinkedIn you have so much more room to actually put so much more color on your profile and speak about so much more of yourself. So no, if you're going for more than one company or more than one job on LinkedIn, I would have LinkedIn much broader and add much more information. Really going broader, also speaking about all your volunteering experience. You can even add all your publications, to do some name dropping on LinkedIn, which you shouldn't do on your CV when you're going for like a non-academic job. So short answer, CV really focused, LinkedIn, draw the full picture.
Just a very quick answer on the question of Adriana. There is no quick answer, unfortunately, but I refer you to the webinar we did last year or a year and a half ago on doing a job interview. It is important to think about this, to think about how can you prepare for negotiating, and we really included a part in this webinar.
And I don't know if you are from Leuven or not, doesn't matter, it's on the internet anyways. If you go to Leuven Eureka Career Center, we also had a webinar on negotiations. So if you go to the Eureka Career Center and then Lebermarkt information and then expert talk, it was one of the expert talks actually also specifically on negotiations and how to go about it.
Okay. So then there is a question of Katarina, and she asks, what if you make the transition from industry to academia? So the opposite a little bit of what we have mostly talked about. What is your recommendation when it comes to showing or bringing skills from this domain, from industry to academia to a PhD or research role?
Good question.
Yeah.
Well, are we speaking about CVs? What is the recommendation to show?
So, yeah.
Well, maybe you know already, but the CVs are different. On an academic CV, it's really, you put everything you have, every conference you've visited, all your publications, all the classes you've been teaching, whereas a business CV, it's much more compressed and much more tailored. To show what kind of skills. Well, that's actually a good question to all the other researchers in the room. What are the skills you, as a researcher, definitely need to do? I don't have a quick answer here, Katarina.
I think it's also interesting to go back to the slides I showed on the where they made a comparison between the self-reported skills at the end of the PhD and that needed in your current work field. So a lot of times the same skills are needed to certain levels, but I think it's probably very valuable to bring your skills from industry and with this fresh non-academic look going into research. So it can be very nurturing to take this perspective, I think, and to also talk about this subject coming from industry, I think. Yeah. Okay, it's almost 2:00.
There's one last one.
Yes.
Would you suggest reference from former employees? It depends a bit on in which country you are and what the customs there are. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sorry for this misleading answer, maybe. If you can put references, but only if they really make sense. If you put references on your CV, it's not like in the States, for example, where it's very typical to do that. Here in Europe, it's not that typical. If it's about name dropping, if you really want to say, I've been working with this person and that person, you can put that somewhere on your CV. You can even put that under your work experience or under your PhD when it comes to collaborators, co-promoters, and so on. So it's really up to you. If you want to say something specific, put them there. If you do so, always brief them. Call them, send them a mail, whatever, and brief them what kind of job you're going for, who they can expect to call, maybe even what kind of skills you want them to highlight for you. So if you decide to do so, make sure they know that you've done so.
Okay. So thank you very much for following this webinar. We really hope you found you were able to be inspired, that it was really useful for you. Please also follow us on LinkedIn. And here you can see the upcoming webinars. So in 2 weeks' time on Friday, we have a panel discussion on career tracks on ATMPs. So we have 4 speakers there. So that will be really interesting. I hope I will also join this one. And then there are 2 scientific webinars on manufacturing and on market access, which is on November 29th, December 20th. On our website and on social media, you can find also registration possibilities. Thank you very much. And we really hope you have a nice day. And please know also that you can always rewatch this recording on the EATRIS website. Good afternoon, everybody.